Yo, 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 yo. I'm Josh Paulison, and I want to talk about how concerned should I be about performance. And to be honest, this conversation kind of triggers me because I've heard in multiple contexts people say performance doesn't matter, nobody cares about performance, and then seeing the reactions of people using the product and they cared about performance. And so I'm actually going to be focusing on questions that will appease people who think performance doesn't matter. Questions that I think will move the conversation forward, even if somebody is insistent that nobody cares about performance, even though that's not true. And I've seen data I've just seen responses from end users who clearly care. And once that starts to grow enough, suddenly everybody cares and it's a freak out moment. And or if you start trying to port to other platforms or things like that, performance does matter. But I want to talk about some questions that will appease even people who think it doesn't. Because there's performance for the end users. That's not the only performance question. And so let's talk about some questions where even if, like, let's say that you're on a team and you care about performance and nobody else does. These are questions that you can use to help move the conversation forward and that can actually help you to improve performance over time, because these are questions that, again, should hit everybody, even if they are not on the same page with you about performance. Question number one, how does this affect development time? Ooh, that's a good question, because as soon as you start talking about development time, people start to care. Hey, you know what? Our app takes 10 seconds to load. Who cares? Well, every time that a developer has to recompile and start the project, it takes them 10 seconds. If you have 10 programmers on a project and they have to restart the project 100 times a day, that's 100 times 10 seconds times 10 programmers. You get the idea. And so you can end up just looking at our performance issues are not just end user issues, they are developer issues. If I'm trying to test a feature and it takes me 5 seconds to test the feature every time, that's going to affect the testing. That could, and it might be like there could be, depending on your setup, it might be that you have QA running through doing tests. It could be that you have programmers. I come from smaller teams in general, so there weren't necessarily QA departments that were separate from programmers. The programmers just had to do the testing as well. That's the case that I would often fall into. And so, how does this affect development time? Programmer time is valued highly. If it affects the end user time, then it is affecting developer time as well. And so rather than making it into an end user argument, you can go, well, how is this affecting development time? And that can be a really good way to start up and to push forward the conversation as well. And another question that's related, but it's very different, and it's important to note the difference. How does this affect development process? So what do I mean by that? Well, it could be that you're waiting longer for something to compile. What are you going to do if it takes longer for something to compile? I know in my experience what I do, like for example, I had an issue in a project recently in Unity where every time that I was recompiling, it would end up taking a minute. And I wasn't quite sure why, and I started to dig into it, but the result of that was that I recompiled less often because I didn't want to deal with that long compilation time. I didn't want to deal with the long time. Actually, it wasn't compilation. It was looking through all the assets that was slowing it down. It was a different issue where there were some broken assets. That's not important. Having a slower development cycle, performance issues can affect not just the time, but the process. If your programmers are compiling less often, or they are testing the game less often because it is so slow to do it, and they need to hit their target, so then their code is probably going to be less stable. If it's taking them longer to get to a place where they can step through their code in the debugger, they're less likely to do that. They're more likely to push out changes and just hope that somebody else tests them. It's going to affect your development process. And while it would be ideal that it doesn't, people have deadlines, people have timelines, there are demands from up higher, and so people will find shortcuts. And if your development time is cut, if your performance is cut, the time that it takes to do things is longer, you're going to change your processes to work within that. And so it's not just about time, it's process. And then the third question, and I kind of love this question because it kind of gets to the heart, and I think that it's one that, for me at least, might be anger. I might get angry at the answers, but what are the metrics you care about? If you don't care about performance, what do you care about? Well, we want more features in, but we don't care how performant they are. Well, okay. Do you care about the core user experience, or do you care about getting more of a list of features out there? What are the metrics that you care about? If you care a lot about the time that players are using the app, one of my questions is your performance increasing the friction for people to do that? Would people be more likely to start it up or to go and do this if it didn't take as long? Because if it's affecting development process, if it is at an extent, now of course they're like compilation time isn't something that end users are dealing with, right? And I understand that working in an editor is going to be slower as a general thing than player experience, though. That depends, because you could have developer computers versus player computers, all sorts of different things, different hardware, could have different things cached, etc. There's a lot of different things. It could be very different. But what are the metrics you do care about? You have to know that. And part of it is also, if you want to have this conversation, then you might find that performance falls right square in the middle of what you actually care about. If you're like, hey, well, what we care about is that we get more users playing on these platforms. Okay, well, is the performance bad on these platforms? Because if it is, people probably aren't going to want to play on those platforms, even if it's more convenient or if there are benefits. The more portable a platform is, the worse its performance is a general rule. Phone is going to perform worse, probably, not, you know, I shouldn't say that it will perform worse than a Nintendo Switch. It just depends on the phone. In general, that's you're gonna have they're gonna have different issues with different platforms. I'm used to getting really bad phones, so I'm used to it always just sucking. But this one's pretty good. Anyway, that's not important. What are the metrics you do care about? And so I think that there's also an important thing to talk about here, and that there's this idea of don't care about performance at times. That's not helpful. It's not helpful to say we don't care about this. A better question is, how much do we care about this, right? Because even if somebody says they don't care about performance, if it takes you 60 seconds to load into a level in your game, they care about performance. So the question is not, do you care about performance? The question is, how much do you care about performance? Do you care about your lower end users? Do you care about, like, and that's where, because a lot of times the end user is the one who gets messed with by this, it can be more useful to focus on development time. And generally, if it's affecting end users, it's also going to affect developers. I'm not going to say that's 100% of the time, because very few things are. But how concerned should you be about performance? As soon as it starts to affect developer time, or it negatively affects your development process, that's a big deal. And usually, what are the metrics you care about? If you're like, hey, it's not affecting these that much, then this is a question to ask. But honestly, if these questions, if it's affecting development time or development process negatively, then that's a conversation that you can pretty easily have. Oh, thanks so much for watching. Happy to hear any thoughts that you have below. Unless you disagree with me, I'm joking. That's fine. And yeah, I think that this is a conversation that I've seen just end with a statement of we don't care about performance, and that's toxic and unhealthy. There needs to be a conversation, like, it's really, how concerned are we? How concerned is it worth us being? What are the metrics we care about? And my hope is that this helps you have some better conversations around this topic. Have a fantastic day. If you're interested in tutoring on web programming or game dev, then I have a Wisant page that I'll link to down below. And also, there was something else that I usually mention in the end that's cool. Oh, well, I've got a game called Josh Paulson's Button Mildly Remastered Edition that is a total meme game that you can also check out. I'm going to link to it down below. You click a button and you increment a number and you change reality. It's an amazing title, and I think you will be amazed. It's a meme game. It's made to be goofy and stupid. And anyway, hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day, and take care. Let me know if there's any topics you'd like me to cover specifically, or non-specifically, or extraordinarily specifically. Goodbye.